Howdy tubers, welcome back to the Zach Life. So I actually shot this intro yesterday and my air conditioner was so loud in here the audio didn't come through very well, but most of this video happened yesterday. I'm trying to put together a series and a playlist, Oilfield 101. It's going to be videos about all the small aspects in layman's terms of what it takes to make a living in the portable oil field, at least the field operations side of it. Anyway, there's be a link in the description. At some point that'll be done, but this video will be part of that. So I've had a lot of people ask me about well service rigs. What's a workover rig versus a well service rig? Terminology I use is a rod machine. I think that's just an old terminology. And they're all the same thing. This is in contrast to a drilling rig, a well service rig, workover rig, whatever you want to call it. Works on wells that are already drilled, already completed. Pull tubing, pull rods, fix things, work on downhole pumps, or what you have to work on a well. Anyway, I've got a rig here. It's been sitting about a year, not quite a year, I think maybe about 8 or 9 months. But anyway, it's a total piece of junk, a total death trap, a total OSHA commitment. It's not just a violation, it's a commitment. But it works, and it works well, and this is perhaps something that someone, you know, it's homemade, it's hacked together. I mean, it was at one time partially factory built, but this is possibly something that someone that would want to buy a couple of junk leases, you could come up with something like this and use it. Don't hold me liable for anything. If you buy one of these and kill somebody, it's your own fault. But whatever. Let's jump out there and take a look at it. All right, so let's just take a quick walk around this piece of junk and kind of go get a good overview of it. So the part up here on top, this is known as a Derrick. These can be, you know, this rig got a Derrick on it. You either have a single pole, double pole, or a Derrick is common. The truck is a 60, I think it's a 68 C50. It's got a 327 Chevrolet in it. This was originally a Coca-Cola truck. My grandpa bought the truck, I think in the early 70s. I don't know exactly when. It was just a few years old, I remember him saying. Anyway, these big things on the front here are hydraulic jacks. I'll show you them in a minute. These are not all that common on these rigs. It works really good with a Derrick rig. I think if I ever built another rig, I would not consider not having them, but most rigs do not. Obviously got a nice flat. Thumbs up if you recognize that, where that came from. Give Jeffy a shout out. I kept the doors open on it. The rats have pretty well stayed out of it. Well, that's a complete lie. This thing got rat infested within a couple of weeks, and I kind of cleaned it out, or had one of my guys do it best we could, and then I left the doors open so they would, you know, maybe not get back in here as bad. Anyway, back here we got a 305 Chevrolet. This drives a compressor, electric fans. It's got a turbo 400 transmission. This is a hydraulic reservoir. I got an air clutch back there. We'll go over all that in a minute. The transmission has got a reverse manual valve body. If you don't know what that means, it's a turbo 400, which is a 3-speed Chevrolet transmission. The actual shifter to the transmission is back here. The full manual valve body, I've only got 4 selections here. This would be neutral. One click back is first, second, and third. Whatever gear you put it in is the only gear it goes into. It does not actually shift under power. So if you pull it back in the third gear, it takes off and runs in the third gear. Go over all the gauges and stuff in a minute. I did actually already turn the switch on and hit the key. The voltage came up to about 11, but it did not crank. It did not do anything, so I'm gonna have to put some cables on it. Same back here. I forgot about this jack. The foot broke off of it. I'll have to put something under there before we can set it up. Hydraulic jack there. These are hydraulic screw jacks. Go over them in a minute. All this stuff when we set it up. These are power tongs. Here's the chains and the drawworks I want to go before we start it. This is an air clutch. This is splined to the output of the transmission. There's a lever back there. When you give air to this clutch, this moves together and locks the output of the transmission to this sprocket. This sprocket turns this shaft, which is the jack shaft, turns that shaft and this chain, and rotates all of this stuff. Coming back to the other side, we've got a lever here that's spring loaded. You can see it actuates a dog clutch, when that clutch is engaged and it is spring engaged, it ties this shaft to this chain, and that chain is what turns the Drawworks tubing drum. Originally this rig was a single drum rig. Sometime way back in the old days, probably in the 50s, they put this sand line on here. We'll go over what that means in a minute. But anyway, if you're going to kick the sand line in, I've got this lever here actuates this chain here, and stuff will spin all the time, and this spline dog clutch will engage this shaft, which is you know, made onto the drum to this, and that's what will engage it. Got a hydraulic pump. It's belt driven off the engine. This is a bypass valve. If you've got the valve shut, that it effectively engages a hydraulic pump. It kind of loads the engine up, and if you're pulling rods and you don't need hydraulics, you can kick that out, and it's just a bypass. You can operate it from the operator stand, and it just keeps it from having, you know, an extra parasitic load on it. I guess I'm gonna pull around and get some cables on it. We'll see if we can get it to crank. I left the key on it. It's actually moving a little bit of air there. See if we can get it to run. All right, all that, and I don't think the batteries actually were dead. It still wouldn't crank. I had to hammer on the starter, and it went to cranking. So this is the operator stand. I'm gonna fold it down. It's where you would stand while you run it. This keeps you up out of the mud. This is a brake handle. It's just held up by the brake handle. Can't do this one-handed, but you just pick the brake handle up and it comes down like that. Anyway, here's the throttle. Here's the gas pedal. It runs through a complicated bunch of linkages. Oh, I don't know if you see, it goes all over the carburetor. I'll probably have to crank on this a while, because the fuel tank is actually in the cab of the truck, or behind the seat, and it's got to draw fuel all the way up down the frame and up to the engine. There we go. So you can't hardly read the gauges here, but this is hydraulic pressure. If we get my little pull my little bypass valve out, it goes to 0. But it takes 500 pounds to push hydraulic fluid through all the valves and everything. This is a hydraulic switcher. This would kick all of this hydraulics out and send it all to the power tongs. We'll go over that in a minute. This is actually a vacuum gauge. It's reading about 10 or 11 points of vacuum. This is how hard the hydraulic pump is having to suck through the filter. This runs pretty high. The filter is not big enough, but if the filter starts plugging up, it'll read more vacuum in idle like we're sitting. These are the pressure gauges that read the pressure on the front hydraulic levelers, and this will tell you how much weight's on the front end if you're pulling on something and the front end starts getting light. These two gauges read the pressure on these cylinders. You can use these sort of like a weight indicator. This will tell you how hard you're pulling, but how much weight is being put on these screw jacks. And this one is air pressure. We're building air pressure. I run about 200 pounds of air on this rig. This is a structural member, but I use it as an air tank. And here's my water drain valve. Kind of got sandblasted. Alright, so these first 6 valves run on my levelers. This one will be this one right here. Golly, they're all froze up. Alright, so this would be this leveler. This valve here is the one on the other side. These are the front two, and these are the 2 screw jacks. Alright, so this is what's known as a suicide wheel, or an actual split rim. And this is not, these are different than a lock ring. I want to show you the difference. So this is a lock ring wheel, and a lot of people call these split rims, and I don't think that's actually correct, but I mean, it's just a name. But a lock ring has got this ring that comes off, and if this ring blows off, you know, it kills you too. But these aren't that bad about blowing up. Once the tire is seated, this thing locks in there pretty well. These, on the other hand, don't have a lock ring. These are actually a 2-piece wheel, and there's a seam in there. I don't know if you can see it. The wheel actually comes in 2. These are the wheels that blow up and kill people. You need to be careful. Now this is actually my spare. The tire that goes on this thing's got a hole in it. I need to get it fixed and put back on here, but I think I can gear this up. This tire is just completely rotted. It is so hot out there. I'm walking around with the camera in my hand. It's not like it's laying out on something hot. And the camera says, camera hot. I'm thinking, yeah, Zach hot too. Anyway, I'm letting that tire air up. My pickup says it's 106. It has been absolutely unbearable last couple of weeks. And it's like 11:20 right now, 11:30, it may be noon. I don't have my watch on it, it's charged my watch. Anyway, that's one of the reasons I hadn't had many videos out, is it's just too hot to feel like picking up a camera. I get what I can do as quick as I can in the morning, and then go sit in the air conditioner during the middle of the day, and then go work from, you know, 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening till midnight, trying to get something done. Anyway, but this tire's about aired up. So we'll take a look at it. This 100-foot air hose is really handy. I just bought that from Harbor Freight. You can stretch it all the way out, you know, to a pipe trailer or your pickup or wherever you need to work. Works really nice. So the first thing I'll do when we get ready to set this thing up, and I'm gonna set it up today just because it's been so long, I will make sure we won't have any trouble, is throw out the boards. And so I got a board that goes under this jack. That one, I got to pick it up. One that's supposed to go under here, and I got to find something to set that on, because that thing will just go through that board. Now most of the weight should sit on these screw jacks, and after they're set up, I'll go ahead and show you. This nut here is supposed to turn easily, and you know, you get the rig all leveled up and everything, and then you run these nuts up to where they're up here, so the weight actually sits on the threads and not the hydraulics. Now I'm just going to visually, by feel, level up the rig. It seems like this side's a little bit low. We'll run the other jack over there down till it touches. Run the screw jacks down. Please come out here and get out of the way. Go ahead and get the weight on the front end. Get the front end picked up a little bit. That'll be nice and level. Now how this sets up, I've got this sinker bar, and this sand line has been borrowed, and that's why it's laying on the ground. Normally it would be up in the derrick. It's going to be kind of a pain to deal with here. I'll suck it up once we stand it up. But most of these rigs have got guide wires, and this one does not. I've got guide chains. And as the rig lays back, these are what actually will catch the derrick and keep the derrick from going too far. I mean, it's structurally built where if you stood it up without them, it wouldn't just go over, but you couldn't pull a well like that. You know, that's what holds the weight when you pull a well. I want to try to clip you on something over here so you can kind of get a bird's eye view. The first thing I'm going to do, or the next thing I guess, is I'm going to pick this sand line up. This is a sinker bar. It's just a solid bar. Just made for weight. If you run this down on the wheel to swab with or something, or whatever, it's just used for weight. It's not screwed up, but it's made several rounds and it's rusted. This is not going to fall off. It's got quite a few threads in it. Obviously, if I was going to run this down in a well, I'd make that up. Or if I was going to use it, I'd make it up. But it's as good as it's going to get today. Anyway, this cable goes up over the top, over the big shiv at the top, and is back on this drum. And so to pick this up, we need to turn that drum. So we'll crank it up. This will put the transmission into high gear. This is a foot operated deal, as I explained earlier. This works the dog clutch, which will disengage this shaft from the tubing drum. And so this is the air valve that works the air clutch back over I described. If I pull this in, that's going to kick in a jack shaft. Now to pick the sand line up, this engages right here. We'll engage this. I'm going to try to do this real quick without knocking myself out with the cable behind me, is to throw this clutch in and then get on the brake and stop this. I'm going to see if I can do it all at the same time. All right, now then I can just ease up on the brake here and slowly pick this up instead of having to do it with like a clutch. And as it comes crashing in here and I've got no help to catch it, that's what I was trying to keep from knocking myself out. And we'll kick the sand line out, and now by letting up on this kicks the tubing line in. I'm going to kick the air clutch in. You can see the blocks go up. Now to come down with this, I'm going to release my dog clutch. That lets it free fall. Now I need to talk quickly about this clutch setup and how goofy all this stuff is, because this is very unusual, the way this is done. Most rigs have got manual transmissions, and you'll just go put them in first, second, third, fourth, or fifth, or whatever gear ratio you need. Obviously, lower gear ratio you can pull harder, and a higher gear ratio you can go faster. And then rigs will have, most rigs today on this jack shaft that comes across here, this jack shaft turns all the time. And you'll have a big pneumatic clutch, not unlike my air clutch, but they're usually a lot bigger, that is on this jack shaft that this chain runs on. And so to engage it, you'll simply pull the air clutch in, and that's what will engage the tubing drum, or there'll be another air clutch out here that works the sand line. Now in the old days, how this rig is, this is sort of a hybrid, homemade hybrid. They had these dog clutches, and so you would actually have a clutch pedal back here that would actually work the clutch on the transmission, the actual engine clutch. And so how you would do it was you would mash the clutch in. You would have a handle here that worked, you know, like this one that worked the tubing drum. You put it in, clunk, 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 and then you would step on the throttle, and then you would ease up on the clutch pedal, and you'd use a clutch, actually the clutch in the engine. That's kind of dangerous. I mean, a lot of people do it, it's okay, but the problem is if your foot steps off the clutch or something, you know, you can kind of get everything in a bind real quick. You know, the whole air clutch deal works better. You can slip them. They're designed to be slipped more. Of course, this is a homemade hybrid. Clutches are about 20,000 bucks for a set of them. That wasn't what I wanted to do, and this works good enough for something I'm going to run. So anyway, the next thing we got to do is scope this thing up. It's too short right now to do anything. Most all rigs scope up. There is a few single stiff Derrick rigs, but they're uncommon. All the pole rigs and the Derrick rigs and everything usually scope up. Anyway, I don't know if you can tell, but this is actually two different Derricks. It's a small one inside a large one, and we'll scope the small one up to the auto pins right there. Now, this is going to be hard to show, but there's some cable clamps and a cable that's hooked onto the bottom side of the Derrick. It's going to be hard to pick out, I should say. Anyway, there's a cable that runs between the two pieces of Derrick up to the top, and there's a little shiv right up there somewhere. I can't see in the screen good enough to tell. Anyway, it comes back down the back side of the Derrick, back down, and ends up right here. Now what this does is if we pull on this cable, you can see it actuating that one, it will pick up the inside of the Derrick and pull it up. Now this rig's got auto pins. Most rigs, you'd actually, when you scope it up, you got to have a guy climb up there and actually put a physical pin in. There's some auto pins The mechanism's simple, but it's kind of hard to explain. It comes back to this little steel cable. If we pull out on this cable, you can see them actuated. They're spring loaded. When we get the Derrick up high enough, the sun is right in my eyeballs. When we get the Derrick up high enough, those pins will clip in, and that'll hold the Derrick up. That's what the weight will sit on. Now to scope this thing, we'll use the tubing drum. We'll basically have the, here's a brake for the sand line. We'll let the sand line down until it more or less hits the ground. Same with the tubing drum. And there is a hole in this tubing drum. I'll put you up where you can watch it. We will hook this hook in it and wind this cable up in this tubing drum. And that's what will actually scope the Derrick out. So this is called a rod hook. In this hook, you'll hook the rod elevators. I'm not going to go over how these work. That's going to be a different show. We're just going to talk about the rig one, about how the rig works in this one. Now this rig, a lot of rigs use bells like this, and you'll actually hang the rod hook from the bells. I kind of do this backwards. I got this big goofy D-ring, and I actually just hang this in my rod hook, and these are the tubing elevators. Same deal. Not really going to explain this, but the tubing will sit in here. You'll shut these. The collar sits here. This is how you pick up tubing. These here are the tubing slips. These slips are pneumatically actuated. I've got a valve here. Of course, they're been sitting there so long they're froze up, but typically they're ran with the valve. They open up, and when you shut them, they've got jaws in them and teeth, and they grab around the pipe, and this is what holds the tubing. So we've got a cylinder, and I've got a homemade little winch right there. That's just a hydraulic motor with a cable wrapped around it, basically a homemade shib. That goes up the top of the Derrick. It's controlled hydraulically by a lever over there. This is a not very strong, but a nice little high-speed winch. It works good for picking up something that weighs, a couple 100 pounds, a little bit more than you want to pick up with by hand. We can run it up and down here. It's this first one here. It's a pretty high speed. It works good for pulling heads and stuff. It would kind of laugh because how fast it is. You can't pick much up with it. You probably pick 300 pounds up. It's really handy. It's like having a third or fourth person. We've got a hydraulic cylinder that's right here that's got a cable that comes off of it, kind of up there at the same place and back down. It's chained off right here. There's the end of the cable. This cylinder is a cylinder we use to pick the power tongs up. So we'll hang these power tongs off of that, and there's a valve on here, and also on my operator stand, you've got a 4 or 5 foot range of motion to move the power tongs up and down wherever you need to be. Power tongs are pretty straightforward. I need to get them off to show you how they work. I'll do that at some point later. I don't want to wrestle them off. It really takes 2 people to get them off and on. But they're just a set of backups. These are pneumatically actuated, and they got jaws in there that grab the collar. These jaws will kick out. I can probably actually make them turn. See, they'll come out and grab the pipe, and then you got to flip them over, but they'll grab and turn the pipe hydraulically. All right, so to go over the actual operations of this thing, this is the tubing line, rod hook. I kind of went over that. This here is the brake that works that's used for the tubing line. These are just band brakes. They've got you know, adjustment up here. You've got to adjust them independently, and you've got to keep them equalized. You know, it doesn't take a lot of force on the brake handle. A few pounds usually will stop, you know, 15,000 pounds of weight. The brakes do get hot. As the brakes get hot, they get less effective and they get sort of slicker. I don't know if that's the right way to use it. We've got, you know, this knob here controls the air clutch over there. I don't know if you can see it moving. You can actually visually see it actuate. Most air clutches are not like that. I think that came out of like some kind of industrial washing machine or something weird. Like I said, the dog clutch is spring loaded, so in this normal operation with the rig running, when you kick the air clutch in, it's going to kick the tubing drum in and it's going to go up. Of course, the more gas you give it, the faster it's going to go, or the higher gear you put it in, it's going to take off. anyway, that's about the size of it. I got to get the truck engine run, but I'm going to go ahead and start trying to get this video put together so I can have it up for y'all tomorrow. It's certainly nothing special to see. Everybody's heard of Small Block Chevrolet Run. And outside of that, that's all of it. I hope you kind of get an idea of what we're doing. I realized that we didn't actually work on a well. I think we'll probably try to go over that at a date later. I wanted to spend this time, you know, this channel is just sort of about my life. It's about the Zach life, and this is just what I had to do today. Or yesterday, I had to get that piece of crap to run, and ultimately, you know, that's what it's all about. I hope you learned something. I hope you kind of can get a grasp of how well service rig works and what it does, different kinds and whatnot. But anyway, appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, and all the good things, and we'll catch you on the next one.